heart of where innovation, money, and power collide in Silicon Valley and beyond. This is Bloomberg Technology with Caroline Hyde and Ed Ludlow.
I'm Caroline Hyde at Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York. Ed Ludlow, he's off. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, we'll bring you the full recap from Apple's annual developers conference as shares rise to a record following the company's event. Plus, we'll break down comments from Elon Musk as he says he would ban Apple devices from his companies if OpenAI is integrated into the operating system. And troubled French IT firm Atos, it picks a winner for its bailout. We'll discuss that and the state of French tech and so much more throughout this hour. First, let's check in on the French markets. Let's check in on the macro perspective more broadly. Look, a little bit of anxiety as we run towards the Federal Reserve, that CPI print. But more broadly, we're managing to see tech once again on top, thanks to Apple. Of course, we're up 0.2% on the Nasdaq. The CAC 40, though, having a woeful time in France. Political risk, some anxiety, some rumors swirling that perhaps even Macron could step down if indeed that legislative vote that he has just called doesn't go his way. But that has been suppressed and denied by people close to him, but we're still off by 1.25% in France. We go to some of the interesting fundraising and news coming from France a little bit later in the show. Crypto is under pressure, off by almost 4%. Interesting correlations. Basically, when bonds sell off, so does Bitcoin, and bonds are selling off today. Crypto off by some 4% as we head towards those macro events. Move on and have a look at what's happening on individual movers, and I'm only singling out one. I'm looking at Apple, rising to yet a new record high. We're now up more than 5%. I thought yesterday we were a little bit uninspired by some of the announcements coming from WWDC, but seemingly we're now thinking this will drive the purchases of new phones. Let's stick with it. Shares, as we hit this record, we want to delve into the AI announcements. Some of it mixed, but one tech titan has a pretty hot take. Elon Musk saying he'd ban Apple devices from his companies if OpenAI's artificial intelligence software is integrated as the operating system level, calling the tie-up a security risk. We want to get into the announcements. We want to get into Elon Musk's take. Bloomberg Mark Gurman here with the AI breakdown. Kurt Wagner, of course, an author on all things Elon. And Mark, I want to start with you because surmise the market reaction. You thought perhaps some of it was a bit lackluster, but the market seems to be liking the fact that we might buy some new iPhones on this.
I definitely don't think this is going to drive iPhone 16 sales this fall in any significant way. I do think that over time, this is going to seriously drive sales of follow-up iterations of the iPhone, maybe the one after, maybe the one after that, maybe the one after that, and well into the future. I do believe it's going to enable a set of a new generation of Apple devices, things like AR glasses, home robots, enhanced AirPods with AI and cameras. So this really sets the stage for Apple's future. Now, the most important part here is Apple no longer has to worry about the risk of people switching away from the Apple ecosystem, seeking a more AI-ified phone. Apple now has the same functionality that Samsung has, that Google has, that other players have in terms of deep AI integration into its devices. So I think from that standpoint, it's a positive, and that's making the street quite happy. I think they're digesting. There was a lot of stuff on Monday at the Worldwide Developers Conference. I think they've been going through what the Apple announcements were, and they see how comprehensive the set of tools that Apple's offering here with a quintessential Apple spin with its privacy standpoint and very deep integration.
Let's talk about privacy and integration, Kurt, because privacy has been called into question by one Elon Musk because of the integration with ChatGPT. And Kurt, can you just keep us up to speed with what Elon Musk is accusing here?
Yeah, well, Elon is basically saying that if ChatGPT is infused at the operating system level of these phones, that, it would have access to all of the data on the phone, which would go to Apple and then go to OpenAI. What you have to remember, of course, is that Elon has a lot of incentive to, see this idea that this is an unsafe and a privacy issue because he is building a direct competitor to ChatGPT with his XAI business that's building Grok, its own chatbot. So I do think that this is the kind of thing that he is, incentivized to do, to kind of pour cold water on this partnership, to, make people question or doubt whether or not this is done above board, because he stands to benefit here with his own business and his own companies building a rival product.
Oh, Mark, apart from going to Tim Cook with this, we go to you, because I don't know anyone who can help square us up on whether this is a key privacy risk better than you could. Mark, what do you make of some of the accusations and whether or not this integration would open up any privacy concerns?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with Kurt, right? Elon Musk doesn't have the best of relationships with OpenAI and Sam Altman, for one, doesn't have the best relationship with Apple and Tim Cook. He's not a fan of their App Store policies. He's building Grok, right, through his own XAI company, right? It's integrated for some users into the X app right now. So he has an incentive to sort of pour cold water on this idea and raise skepticism. On the other hand, I do believe there are some privacy questions here. I don't think there's many questions about Apple's in-house AI large language models. I think they showed in great ways how private their on-device AI is, their own iCloud-based AI protection. But once you start working with a third party, you're talking about servers that are powered by Microsoft Azure. You're talking about technology that's powered by OpenAI. There isn't a clearly explained way how Apple can verify the privacy of your data that's input into ChatGPT. In fact, when you start moving from Apple's AI models on the phone to the ChatGPT models, the phone makes it very clear that you're now in OpenAI territory, right? So I think the biggest thing they're doing right now is warning consumers that your data is being input into a third-party provider, but they haven't showed a way to verify the privacy of that information. However, Apple and OpenAI have said that they are keeping that data that's input from the iPhone especially private. They're not logging it. They're not creating data profiles. But it is really, the onus really is on OpenAI to verify that, and Apple to keep on top of OpenAI to make sure that they don't breach any of those terms on the privacy side of that partnership, which I honestly think they'll do.
Kurt, maybe therefore there is some reason to the shouting that's going on social media by Elon Musk, but also, Kurt, we're a bit immune to it. We've had Elon Musk throw some barbed comments to Tim Cook in the past, of course, about perhaps the way in which the App Store is run. We know that he's actually suing OpenAI. How likely do you think it is that he would ban Apple iPhones across his 6 companies?
I mean, this is someone who, as we know, Caroline, is not afraid of controversy and conflict and picking fights with other very rich and powerful people, Tim Cook being one, Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, the list goes on and on. So I do think it's the kind of thing that, he might do to try to prove a point or to make a point. And, for him, he's now even sort of hinting at, maybe he would build his own phone someday, right? Like maybe he would partner with someone for a phone. I think this is very Elon. It's on brand for him, right? He sort of picks these fights. He does it very publicly. He makes these grand claims or aspirations. And then, when push comes to shove, we'll see what he does. But I don't think it's the kind of thing that, for him, it's not a huge skin off his back, right? If it makes the point he's trying to make. And I think, as Mark and I have pointed out, that's the goal here, is to sort of cast doubt on this whole partnership, to cast doubt on these other companies that are considered rivals of his, and to do so in a very public way.
Well, he's got the public's attention for now. So too does Apple. From WWDC, Mark Gurman, great roundup. Kurt Wagner with all the insights on Elon's Inc. We appreciate it. Meanwhile, we've just got some breaking news. We'll keep you up to date with what is currently happening from a legal perspective. Hunter Biden's jury tells the court that it has indeed reached a verdict in the gun case regarding Hunter Biden. We will bring you the updates as and when we receive them. For now, though, we stick to our knitting, which is technology on this show. Nabila Popol is with us, Senior Research Director with IDC, to get her read on yesterday's announcements at WWDC. And I think what the question for me in many ways is why the market is loving it so much when initially we thought there's no wow factor here.
Hi, Caroline. Thanks for having me. You're so right, because I've been absorbing all this information, as I'm sure everyone else here. I think what was really big is, yesterday there might have been a lackluster response because, like you said, there wasn't any brand new feature or use case that we haven't seen yet, right, from the other platforms or the other players in the market. But what to me really stood out, I think what's catching on, the wave here, is this is a big move. It's a bold, step forward for Apple. They were, behind the curve a little bit, but I think the way they've come out right now, they've told, what Apple does best, right? They've told a really compelling consumer story. Most consumers aren't really aware about, what's generative AI and what it can do. What I think Apple did that, was, I guess, genius on their part is the way they integrated it into the user experience, which is, of course, central to Apple's, history and how it's always been about the user experience. And it's about how bringing in AI on device with everything that we do, right, and everyday apps that we have, without having to go somewhere, click on a different app or a chatbot. It's just everything is integrated. Yes. And then, of course, there's strong message on, if you do it with Apple Intelligence, it's going to be private and secure.
But that privacy and security issue, do you think that that's in any way going to be questioned by what Musk is currently saying? Do you think it might put off people going for the iPhone 16?
Elon Musk will be Elon Musk, right? Like we just said in the earlier segment, there's definitely going to be a lot of talk that is going to be around this. But I think Apple's messaging was clear, right? That if you using AI, the way they have shown this and everything that they've shown yesterday was it's going to give you a personalized, customized experience. It's going to keep most of things on device. It's only because that's where they're not using, I think there's a lot of confusion. And I was like looking into this myself earlier this morning. We have our team on ground at Apple Park to verify, what is it the models that are being used in all of Apple Intelligence and all the features that we saw, right? What are the different, whether it's Genmojis, whether it's the summarization, transcription, search, everything that's on device, it's based on Apple's own AI models. It's only the ChatGPT and OpenAI comes in when you're trying to prompt Siri for a question that Siri can't use the information that's on your device to answer, or Apple's own AI model. And that's the opt-in feature, which you're going to give user or Siri access to, or, give your permission to access ChatGPT. Yeah. So I think the way they have messaged it is pretty clear that everything that you do on the Apple device will be secure. And even when Apple or the device can't use its own, on-device AI model, it's going to use Apple's secure cloud to personalized clouds to be able to run those more complicated AI models. But ChatGPT, I think it was segmented in a different way that only used during Siri prompts.
Nabila, what's interesting is this is a global company with a lot of focus on China, and I'm interested as to longer term. We know that they're going to perhaps be more agnostic about which large language model they use, adopt, or indeed build their own. But can this go live in China? Will it stimulate demand in China?
So the key, and again, like we were talking to our China team this morning, because ChatGPT isn't available in China right now with this iteration, it's not going to benefit the upgrade cycle in China with the device this year. However, the fact that Apple's in AI, the fact that Apple is doing these things is going to benefit the consumer perception, which was taking, a negative turn, especially in China, because consumers are, placing AI as a driving factor in their devices in terms of purchasing. So I think this year, the upgrade cycle will probably be more impacted because, as they said, it's going to be available in the fall and only supported the English language. So countries like US, UK, or any consumers that are primarily English driven, it's going to drive, because there's plenty of, users out there with iPhone 11 and iPhone 12, because the average refresh cycle, we're still looking at about 3 to 4 years.
Right.
So there's plenty of those users that will, want these new devices, even if it's just English support, because, I'm an English speaking user.
Nabila, keeping it global for us. We thank you so much. Nabila Popel, thank you. Senior Research Director with IDC. French AI startup Mistral has raised $644 million in a new funding round that now values the company at close to 6 billion euros. The round, led by venture capital firm General Catalyst, gives the company additional resources to take on bigger global players, such as, of course, OpenAI here in the US. Mistral is France's prized AI champion. It's attracted more than 1 billion euros in investment in this last year alone. Meanwhile, there's a less prized French company right now. Oh, indeed, we do have some breaking news coming from the US. So before we head back out to France, I just want to have a look that Hunter Biden has indeed been convicted of gun charges by a jury in a Delaware trial. The jury took 3 hours to reach a verdict against the president's son, and Hunter Biden still faces a separate tax crime trial in California. We now want to go out to Kayleigh Lyons, who's been standing by for us in Washington. And Kayleigh, the impact of this.
Could be significant, Caroline. Hunter Biden here found guilty of all 3 counts with which he was charged. This is the first time in history that a child of a sitting president has been convicted in federal court. Of course, this all stems from his purchase of a gun in 2018 when he was addicted, according to prosecutors, to crack cocaine. And this jury has indeed agreed with the prosecution, finding him guilty of these 3 crimes, which he will be sentenced for not today, but in a number of weeks. It potentially carries a maximum sentence of 25 years in prison, although although it's unlikely that maximum sentence would be given for a first-time offender. But obviously, this has massive both personal and political implications for the incumbent president. Of course, this is the son of Joe Biden we are talking about. It could potentially bring political ramification to him as well, in addition to a great deal of personal difficulty. We have heard from President Biden affirmed just days ago that he would not intervene and pardon his son if he was indeed found guilty, as he has been today. There could potentially be some political upside here in that this, of course, follows just less than 2 weeks ago Donald Trump being found guilty in a court in New York of 34 felony counts and allegations from Trump and other Republicans that the justice system has been weaponized against Donald Trump. But it's the same justice system that has now found Hunter Biden guilty of a number of crimes. So potentially it throws some cold water on that argument. Still, though, it does shine a uncomfortable spotlight on the president's family. And this also is just one case in which Hunter Biden had been charged with crimes. He does face a separate trial in September on tax crimes, Caroline.
Yes, exactly. That one in California. Can you give us a breakdown of what next then, Kayleigh, post this verdict?
Well, we'll be awaiting sentencing, Caroline, is really the question here. As I mentioned, 25 years is the maximum. 2 of these gun charges carries a maximum sentence of 10 years each. The third, a maximum sentence of 5 years. But this is the first time that Hunter Biden, that is, has been convicted of a crime. So that could bring potentially more leniency. But really, we'll be looking to see what ultimately the judge decides. Is it will be up to that one individual in terms of the sentencing. We'll also be looking to see whether there is an appeal on the part of the defense and whether or not they then look ahead to that trial that is set to happen in September. If there is an appellate process still paying out in this case, could they successfully delay that trial potentially, though they have not yet had success in doing so. And it's worth keeping in mind that September tax trial he will be facing in California brings us ever closer to the presidential election, in which Joe Biden, his father, is trying to seek a re-election for a second term, and that timing potentially could add even greater political difficulty than what we're seeing here today with the conviction of the president's son. The first time in history, again, Caroline, that this has happened to the child of a sitting president.
And as you said, already President Biden has said he would not pardon, but I'm interested as to whether we will hear from him, if there's any idea as to whether he will speak on the matter.
Well, he does have a scheduled speaking engagement today. He'll actually be speaking at a gun safety event here in Washington, and he's set to travel to the G7 in Italy. This is where the personal and the presidential duty potentially come into conflict. Caroline, is obviously this is likely a very difficult day for the Biden family. We will see if he makes any statement on this before departing to Italy, but when he does so, attends the G7, that will be carrying out the duties of the presidency, trying to focus on geopolitics, foreign policy, all of the other responsibilities of this office, while also having to deal with the difficulty of having your son, the only living person from the car crash that killed his first wife and daughter many years ago. And of course, Beau Biden, who had survived that crash, died of cancer back in 2015. And that is when many of Hunter Biden's addiction problems really began. And that really was what was at the heart of this case, Caroline. This is a story of someone who was struggling with an addiction. This was very painful, as we saw ex-girlfriends, ex-wives, even Naomi Biden, Hunter Biden's daughter, testifying throughout this trial about the personal difficulty and what he was grappling with over the course of those years that he was an addict, and obviously just shines a very uncomfortable spotlight on the first family.
Very personal, Kayleigh, but very political in nature. And I therefore wonder what impact you think it will have longer term as we enter the election.
It's going to be hard to tell immediately, Caroline, as it has been hard to tell just in the last few weeks what the real impact of Donald Trump's own felony conviction has been, as we haven't seen any great shift in polling thus far. So we'll see if it actually has a material impact on the way that Joe Biden is polling. What I would point out here is there is a very important distinction. What we are talking about in this case is a conviction of the son of a president, not someone who has held the office himself or is seeking to be president. That is different than Donald Trump, who not only is a former president of the United States, but currently is the presumptive Republican nominee. So while this may complicate the messaging that Joe Biden and other Democrats may wanted to have utilized in this election cycle, the idea that Donald Trump is morally questionable by being a convicted felon, perhaps that argument gets more difficult to make when your own son is also convicted of crimes. So that could be politically complicated. And of course, there has been a lot of scrutiny in Congress of Hunter Biden and the entire Biden family, a lot of allegations made by many different members as part of the impeachment inquiry that largely seems to have died down. But it'll be interesting to see if this revs anything up in that regard further congressionally as well. All that said, we're really just going to have to be paying attention to the polls, as right now it is June. We still have almost 5 full months to go before the election on November 5th, and a lot could happen between now and then, including a second criminal trial of Hunter Biden.
Kayleigh, we are, of course, a business network. Is there any implication on companies surrounding gun law and indeed the way that might direct travel for purchases, for demand, for supply?
That's an interesting question, Caroline. Obviously, Joe Biden is largely a president who has spoken about gun safety. He will, in fact, be doing so at an Everytown for Gun Safety event later on today, which, of course, is affiliated with Michael Bloomberg, the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP. But largely, he is a president that has advocated for greater gun control measures, which is difficult for perhaps explanation-wise when your own son illegally purchased a firearm, as he was found guilty of doing today with this crack cocaine addiction. Will it, though, materially change anything around gun laws, Caroline? It's very unlikely, given that no matter what developments we have seen in the gun violence area, mass shooting after mass shooting in the United States, nothing really is ever done legislatively. Joe Biden has signed a number of executive orders looking to restrain gun purchases in some areas, but it's something that you really can't crack down on without congressional approval, and with Republicans in control of the House, that is unlikely to be happening, at least in this Congress.
Look, the courts are being put through the test at the moment, Kayleigh. Are we likely to anticipate more of this as a political narrative, as a political way of doing business here in the United States?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Caroline, because we are at this really unique moment in time where we now have not just a former president and presumptive nominee who has been convicted of crimes, but a president's son convicted of crimes within the same week, with 2-week period. Both of these obviously incredibly historic. We have never seen anything like this before. It will be interesting to see how this alters the narrative, because after Donald Trump's conviction of 34 counts in New York just less than 2 weeks ago, there has been a narrative about a justice system that has been weaponized or targeting Donald Trump. Whether or not that is true, as Joe Biden did not actually have the power to, say, direct a New York state case against Donald Trump, he could theoretically have the power to step in with this special counsel investigation into Hunter Biden, with this trial, potentially with a pardon, and he has declined to do so. He has declined to intervene, as he has really been trying to speak a message of preserving faith in the justice system and allowing it to do its work. So now that this has happened to his son being found guilty of 3 crimes here in Delaware, it will be interesting to see if it does indeed alter the narrative around the way the justice system is working, because you can no longer say it's only going after Donald Trump. It has come for Biden as well.
Kayleigh Lines, just so much information to digest, and reacting in the moment to this finding from the court and from the jury. We thank you very much indeed. All things Washington now. We return to all things technology. Coming up, we're going to be deciding the direction of travel for Apple going forward. Laura Martin of Needham joining us with her reaction on Apple's long-awaited AI strategy. What she makes of the iPhone makers' partnership with OpenAI. That's next. Plus, we already know where Elon Musk stands on Apple's newly announced partnership, but he's getting some empathy from the UAE State Minister for AI and Digital Economy, who spoke to Bloomberg earlier today. Just take a listen.
What Elon said was, if it turns out that they're going to deploy ChatGPT and OpenAI's infrastructure on the OS level, then there are some security risks. And I think given the quality of work that they're doing and the secrecy around the advancements that they're pushing forward, it makes a lot of sense for them to think that way.
Welcome back to Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde in New York, and moments ago we had the breaking news that a Delaware jury has reached a verdict finding Hunter Biden guilty of gun charges. Now, he was found guilty by a federal court jury and has become the first child of a sitting U.S. president to be convicted of such crimes. Now, we know that the verdict came less than 2 weeks after his father's chief rival for the presidency, Donald Trump, was found guilty by a New York jury of 34 counts of falsifying business records late last month. Political system intertwines with the legal system, and to do that with us is Bloomberg's Greg Farrell. And extraordinary, really, what we're currently seeing in terms of how the legal system is becoming a focus for both presidential candidates. But this one is novel in terms of the son of a sitting president.
Yes, absolutely, Caroline. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary because I think Hunter Biden believed he was told he had a deal a year ago to put this behind him, and that fell apart. And it's a question of timing. With Donald Trump being charged in several places, it's just so patently would be unfair. It looked, the optics would be terrible if Hunter Biden weren't charged and, taken to trial.
What did you make of the swiftness or not? Many had felt that perhaps they're coming back a second day. It hadn't been an immediate decision coming from the jury.
Well, of course, we don't know what goes on in the room, but I think that if they get it in the afternoon, let's think about it. This is a serious thing. Let's not just jump to any conclusions. Everybody sleeps on it. This is a normal thing. And they all come back the next day. It's a pretty simple case. And unfortunately for Hunter Biden, he wrote it in a book, what his condition was at the time, and he didn't take the stand. So it's really not a surprise in terms of the verdict. It's more, as you pointed out, the magnitude of this, that the strangeness of the world we're in, where one former president's been convicted 1 week and then the son of the current president right now.
I asked this previously of Kayleigh, and I put it to you as someone who so understands and embodies what the legal system means for U.S. politics, but the U.S. economy as well. Is this the way of the land now? Are we going to see far more legal system taking action around political decision-making?
Unfortunately, I don't believe necessarily in the weaponization of the Justice Department that's been claimed. However, now that we've gone there, now that a local district attorney has brought charges against the former president, this is going to get worse before it gets better. I don't think there's going to be cooler heads that are going to prevail. Whoever loses the election in November might, get even more galvanized, or whoever wins to, exact some retribution. So it's a concerning time that way.
Greg, we really appreciate you analysing what is another unprecedented finding here. Hunter Biden found guilty of gun charges by a federal court jury in Delaware. Greg Farrell, we appreciate him. Meanwhile, let's go back to what we do here at Bloomberg, the markets. Currently seeing, of course, political risk evident over in Europe and France in particular under pressure. We closed the market down with the Stock 600 off by almost a percentage point. France in particular, as Macron calls a key vote. And rumours did swirl as to what would be the longevity of his own presidency. He, of course, has refuted that for now and says that he would remain. NASDAQ 100, the big tech benchmark, currently up 0.1%. Apple guiding us higher. Bitcoin on the downside, up by more than 4% as bonds sell off. A key correlation happening, and indeed much trepidation as we look towards the Federal Reserve decision this week, and indeed an inflation print. Move on, some individual stocks for you. Look, we did get some earnings coming out of Autodesk, and not good enough when it comes to this software provider. We're off by 5%. Tesla down by more than 3%. Interesting what we're seeing currently with Tesla, and JP Morgan having a note out today, really saying that having spoken to investor relations over at the company, they worry that the revenue generation of a robo-taxi ain't coming anytime soon. We're off by more than 3%. But of course, Elon Musk, the leader of Tesla, currently distracted by the frustrations he sees with Apple's relationship with now OpenAI and an integration of ChatGPT within Apple's operating system. Apple currently up more than 6%, a new record high. 205 is where we trade. And that's all because of the WWDC conference, which, of course, opened yesterday with a whole slate of software updates across products, partnership, as I mentioned, with OpenAI, and, of course, its long-awaited Apple Intelligence. Here's CEO Tim Cook.
Recent developments in generative intelligence and large language models offer powerful capabilities that provide the opportunity to take the experience of using Apple products to new heights. Introducing Apple Intelligence, the new personal intelligence system that makes your most personal products even more useful and delightful.
Apparently that video all being shot on Apple devices as well. Jackie Davlos, who was there on the ground yesterday and now live from San Francisco for us. And it felt in the moment that perhaps there wasn't that wow factor, but today the market's showing there is.
That's right, Caroline. It took the market a little while to catch up, but notice how Tim Cook emphasized the word useful. That theme, utility, they mentioned AI for the rest of us, and I think this really showed through in the features that they highlighted yesterday as part of the Apple Intelligence rollout. Let's look at the summarization capabilities that we now have, transcription of audio. You can also personalize AI emojis. When you think about just kind of the mass appeal that can have. That was really key. They also emphasized privacy, but outside of the AI features as well, that iOS 18 upgrade has some pretty cool things coming down the pipeline. For example, you can tap back messages with different emojis. You can schedule messages to be sent later. You can access more apps in different ways in your control center, organize them differently on the home screen. They really gave a lot to people here in this rollout. But look, we were sitting there for an hour and a half before the AI highlights really came through. So there was a lot of anticipation. And look, this is their first swing. And from what we could tell, it's just the first step in this broader AI rollout.
And many felt that actually only sort of name-checking OpenAI for 2 minutes within that 90-minute thereabouts presentation, it was trying to suppress the actual real integration, but really lean into what it will do for you as a consumer, a user, and really trying to identify privacy and protection being key. But Elon Musk calling that into question.
Exactly. Siri was a major highlight because that digital assistant will have the opportunity to basically be able to pull information from ChatGPT when answering questions. Now, you're absolutely right. Privacy was highlighted, Caroline. They made sure to note that you can opt out of this, that you have to give Siri permission to tap into ChatGPT. And when you think about the concerns that Elon Musk is raising, well, it does also shine a spotlight on the other questions that Apple has to answer. What exactly happens to the data? Does OpenAI have access to kind of seeing how you interact with the app on the screen? There's a lot that I think people want to know, and some of those details will come out, but they were keen to actually highlight that users will be asked for permission. Their requests and informations will not be logged. So, of course, really keeping with that Apple privacy ethos.
Jackie Davlos with the roundup. We thank you so much. It was a long day yesterday and up early with us today. We thank you. Let's keep this conversation going. Laura Martin, Senior Entertainment and Internet Analyst over at Needham & Co. You join us for more after, well, you're a buy on Apple. You overall think that the price point is going to go even higher than this to a $220 price point. But what happened at the event yesterday and what galvanizes it today?
Right. So, I think we were very disappointed at the Apple generative AI stuff. First, they put it last, as you said. They talked for 65 minutes about new colors and new things that it felt like Snapchat type of functionality. And then in minute 65, they started talking about the only thing Wall Street cares about, because this company has very anemic growth. They're going to report 1% revenue growth this year. And what we really wanted to hear was what's going on with generative AI that's going to force an iPhone replacement cycle to drive that 1% revenue growth higher to 2, 3, 4%. And there was nothing I felt that they'd announced that made consumers want to run out and replace their iPhone. And now we have to wait a year, because they have an annual replacement cycle. So now if you didn't like what you heard yesterday, you have to wait a year till the next cool generative AI stuff. So, I thought it was a very disappointing day, which is why the shares were down 2% as soon as they finished speaking. Today, they're up 6%, maybe because the developers are finding cool ways that they can integrate these functionality into their own individual apps.
Yeah.
But I thought it was too little too late. They continue to be way behind on generative AI, and they need to catch up.
And they seem to be trying to catch up with, for now, third-party relationships. What is the flow of money here, Laura? Because they're not going to be charging us for the joy of being suddenly able to use ChatGPT, should we wish to do. How much are they going to be paying in OpenAI? How much money are they going to be having to spend? Or is it good that they don't need, their own GPU haul to a certain extent?
Yeah, they say they're going to be using their own servers within to sort of hold on to the iOS data in their own servers in the cloud over at Microsoft. So I do think they are still continuing to focus on privacy. But I think the way the money works is that the way these deals typically work is that Apple will pay the Microsoft Cloud and ChatGPT probably a fixed fee per month, and then they'll put it into your iPhone price. So your iPhone price is going to go from $1,400 to $1,500, and you'll pay for it up front. If they find that there are heavy users, my guess is they add a monthly tier. I pay $20 a month right now for ChatGPT 4. My guess is Apple gets that for a lower price, but they probably surcharge heavy users of that particular functionality. I think a lot of people, because of the privacy issue, will not use it, will not call out to the cloud to ChatGPT, and then Apple it's not costing Apple anymore for those users.
So maybe this key concern referenced by Elon Musk will be listened to by some in the crowd. Laura, the reason we love having you on the show is the breadth of analysis you do across so many of the tech peers and entertainment. I'm interested as to, who is winning the charge of any of the actual device makers or operating system providers? I mean, is Alphabet doing any better with the Google offering?
The only thing that's strategic position for Google Alphabet is better because they have cloud, so they get it cheaper because they own it. They have Android, which is the direct competitor to iOS. They have an ad-driven business in search, which means they have a lot of first-party data. They have YouTube, and the world's moving to video, as we know. YouTube is the #1 streamer and makes a lot of money. Now it's the largest subscription streaming service as well as the largest ad-driven service, which gives them first-party data. So it feels like their strategic position is a lot better, even if they're sort of inferior at every one of those things they do. The fact they do them all gives them really strong, better data on you and also more ways to make money from you. And they don't feel like they're strategically in a box. Apple feels to me like it's strategically in a box. It can't participate in generative AI except for through its billion 5 users. And that isn't really true of Google. It feels like it's going to participate across the globe in its 3 billion users a day that come in for search.
Such great context. Laura Martin, thank you for joining us, Senior Entertainment and Internet Analyst over at Needham & Co. Didn't even get on to Paramount with her next time. Meanwhile, coming up, Masha Buch's Day One Ventures announces its biggest fund yet with backing from 9 female limited partners. We sit down with her. Meanwhile, let's just look at what's happening on the stock market elsewhere. Spotify up a percentage point. Now, we're understanding here at Bloomberg that the company will introduce a new higher price premium plan for some of its users later this year. The plan is going to cost at least $5 more per month, but it's going to include access to high fidelity audio, to new playlisting tools. If you're an addict, you're going to want it, apparently. From New York, this is Bloomberg Technology. Early-stage VC firm Day One Ventures has announced it's raised $150 million for its latest fund, Fund 3. Joining us now, Masha Bucher, founder, general partner at Day One Ventures. And it is the biggest haul of money thus far, and some interesting LPs. Talk to us about how you brought them together.
Hi, I think nice to be here, and I think lots of that, what we have accomplished is because of the great work of the founders that we had the luck investing in and working together with.
So interestingly, some of those founders are now your investors. How many of your original portfolio companies from initial funds have put money in you now?
Well, we were lucky to be backed by a few dozens of founders, including 10 unicorn founders and including 14 founders that we previously backed, which is beautiful to see because it just proves that we, on the one hand, partnered with very successful and promising entrepreneurs who became successful financially, so they can afford to be backing the fund. And on the other hand, it also proves that we were able to build these partnerships that's were like a very strong bond, and they were happy with the experience they got as founders.
Yeah, let's talk about the partnership, because you've got an interesting route into venture funding. And initially, you built a public relations company. You helped these founders tell their stories. And did that allow you, therefore, to get access to early opportunities to invest, and you built from there?
Yeah, I think I started 2 companies before, and previous company was PR studios that I created, and where out of 30 customers that I took, out of few hundreds, 10 became unicorns in 2017, and it just brought me to understanding that lots of companies I'm betting on as a PR, as a publicist, becoming successful. So I pivoted into angel investor, which also went very well, and I had a lot of exits and few unicorns, and that enabled me to get experience to be able to create new fund in 2018. That's how it happened. But speaking about communication, I think if you look at any business problems that you want to solve and any business goal or task you want to solve, I think 90% of business problems are actually communications problems. And I think this is something that we train founders to solve, and this is something we help them to do.
Portfolio includes WorldCoin, of course, the crypto startup that was in some ways co-founded by Sam Altman. You've also got Do Not Pay, you've got You.com. It's interesting that these are all male founders, but you focused on female LPs to a certain extent. How many female founders do you have within your portfolio?
We are lucky to back over 40 female founders that's in our portfolio. I was also very proud that with Fund 3 we were able to bring 9 female limited partners, because Fund 2 had no limited partners, and for Fund 3 I really had as a big goal and North Star to be able to find a few female LPs, and quite proud that we were able to find 9 very successful, mostly female entrepreneurs that decided to back this fund.
Well, bring them on, Masha Bucher. It's a really interesting story. Biggest fund to date, 150 million. We thank you so much, Day One Ventures. Thanks for stopping by the studio. We just want to return to that breaking news regarding the Biden administration potentially considering further restrictions, yet further, on China's access to chip technology used for artificial intelligence. They're targeting new hardware that's now only been making its way very slowly into the market. GAA, Gate-All-Around. It's basically the most cutting-edge chip architecture that really, at the moment, we're seeing semiconductor companies just starting to adopt to make them more powerful. But this could be affecting the likes of NVIDIA in particular. We're seeing pressure on some of these stocks more broadly. Let's talk about the ecosystem of technology with Laure Negia, who's an analyst, portfolio manager over at Comgest. That's a boutique asset management group that has more than $32 billion in assets under management. Been some big, great bets on some key companies within the Mag 7 and more broadly. Are you anticipating yet more geopolitics to interfere with some of the investing landscape here?
Yes, we do. I mean, we think it will affect sentiment. Now, there will be disentangling of sentiment and then hard reality in the P&Ls. But yes, we think geopolitics and the impact on this sector is here to stay.
What's interesting is thus far, NVIDIA, even though it's sold into China significantly, has not been buffeted around too much in terms of its market capitalization because of this, because they've had a bigger demand coming from the US and Western economies. Is that going to counterbalance? Is that going to be enough to sustain these heady valuations?
Tough one, but certainly, the demand is very, very strong and projected to outstrip supply for a good long while yet.
TSMC, for example, I believe is one of the key bets and beneficiaries you've called out in artificial intelligence. Why those particular names? Where are we seeing the money flow when it comes to picks and shovels, then into the application of AI?
Yeah, and when you think of NVIDIA and then everything that supplies into it, there's TSMC. NVIDIA is a TSMC customer. Mm-hmm. Then there's the suppliers to TSMC. So there's very direct plays in the sector, and then there's more and more indirect plays. And it's quite fun to be thinking not just about those direct plays, but some of the indirect plays as well.
Yeah, has NVIDIA got too crowded? Have you felt that people aren't looking more broadly at this overall ecosystem?
Well, it's hard to say NVIDIA is not known. So starting from that place, we like to think who's supplying to them, who's a client of theirs, how can we play this a bit differently, perhaps?
Where else can you play it differently? Because I know that we're thinking of Apple trying to play catch up when it comes to application and real use case of artificial intelligence by you and I in a consumer way. But how is it being adopted elsewhere, and which companies are going to benefit?
So there's a supplier to TSMC that makes the EUV, the extreme ultraviolet lithography equipment called ASML, which has become quite well known, but just a few years ago was not. There are companies like Hoya and Shinetsu Chemical in Japan. Hoya makes the mask blanks that are used to design, etch the semiconductor circuits onto the wafers. And Shinetsu Chemical is a leader in the wafer space. So those tend to be a little bit less well known. And yet they're very present in the supply chain and great beneficiaries.
Got to get global. Have you got to trade and actively trade this market, or do you just sit and wait for valuations to rise?
We think this has been a great buy and hold space because, right now sentiment is very, very buoyant. But look back 2-3 years ago, everyone was extremely depressed. The geopolitics were weighing very heavily. So it's actually a wonderful space to be a long-term buy and hold investor with the ability, when you're brave, to buy more when the sentiment's down.
You're buying more right now? You just said sentiment was up, so I suppose not. It's great to have you here. Come back. I know you're passing through New York. Laure Negia, talking all things tech, Comgest analyst and portfolio manager. Meanwhile, that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Do not forget to check out our podcast. You can find it on the terminal as well as online on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart. This is Bloomberg Technology.